Welcome back to the Barca Breakdown. My name is Yusuf, and I'm here with my co-host Adam.
What's up, guys? Smash that subscribe button, hit the like, because we just won 1-0 against Celta Vigo at the Camp Nou in a pretty bad performance, Use.
Yeah, I was not super confident. You know, we're coming up against Inter Milan this week on Wednesday, and we also have the Clasico on the weekend, and we just are in the race with Real Madrid, tied at 22 points, but we're up on the goal differential. But overall, let's go into what we really got from this game. Barca tend to fall apart in the second half. Our defensive strategies become moot. We lose control of the possession in the midfield. We become a little more chaotic. We are susceptible to counterattacks. We're not organized. Those are the negatives. And on the positive side, I think in the first half, which was mostly all the positives, we can see a lot of open play, good passing lanes, and connections between our left backs, our wingers, and the midfield. And then we also had great opportunities in terms of players running into the box to create space for our forwards. And that from the midfield, Pedri, Xavi did an awesome job with that in the first half. What about you, Adam, as I think about more of these things?
Well, I think for me, you know, there's a few interesting things in the first half that were really made me happy, right? For one, we saw for the first time, I think this season, Pedri being on the right-hand side of the midfield, right, and Xavi on the left. They're switching from their normal positions. And, you know, on the left side, what we've seen from Pedri so far this season, much to the chagrin, I think, of a lot of us and a lot of, you know, Barca fans, is that he's been involved a lot in bringing the ball from deep and helping Busquets in some way get the ball, you know, across the halfway line and then, you know, trying to build attacks through that left side. And unfortunately, it kind of feels like we're taking our best player, Pedri, and putting him in a position that, you know, we don't always need. I think he's basically covering up sometimes Busquets' inability or whoever's playing left back or on the left wing, their inability to get the ball up the field. And even though that's something that is important, we need our players who are playing on the left side to be better. And we need to put Pedri into a more forward position, right? Because we've seen the incisive passing. We've seen his ability to score goals at times. We've seen his ability to interplay with the right winger or the striker, especially with Lewandowski. And so we made that switch, and then we saw, you know, a pretty good offensive structure happening in the first half, right? As compared to Inter, where we were complaining so much about how stagnant it was and we're just passing the ball side to side and then crossing, we saw Pedri attacking that half space up front on the right side. We saw Xavi attacking the other half space, right? We saw some of the things that made us happy last season when we were doing so well, you know, before Frankfurt in the Europa League, where, you know, Ferran Torres, Jordi Alba, in this situation, Xavi, they're really interplaying with each other. People are trying to make runs into open space. If you take a look at that first goal, right, what you have is Jordi Alba seeing Xavi making a magnificent run, gets it over to him, and then now because Pedri is, you know, in that right half space up front, he's able to, you know, come in and eventually put away a poor clearance by the Celta Vigo side. And so I think those were the points in the first half that really made me happiest. There was a bit of a unique choice to play Alonso as a center back, and I thought, you know, Alonso is not that good, but it didn't really turn out to hurt us that much. And then in the second half, it all kind of, you know, stuff hit the fan, as they say, right? Like our team kind of totally shut off. We took out Pedri, we took out Rafinha, and then we put in a great bench squad, right? We put in at one point, I think, Dembele, Frankie de Jong, who are very good players. Who that shouldn't be an issue, but for some reason, when that second half came out, Celta Vigo seemed to alter their mindset in the game, right? They were pushing much more, trying to, you know, when they get the ball, retain it, and then, you know, quickly overload in the box and trying to get some balls and movement going for Iago Aspas. And really in the second half, you just see, you know, Jordi Alba kind of revert to the mean, whereas in the first half, I thought he did pretty well offensively. In the second half, his you know, poor defensive work rate came in, and then the big story for me this whole season, and the reason why we're, you know, tied for first in La Liga, is really Ter Stegen. He had, I think, 3 or 4 brilliant saves in that second half to really help us, you know, keep a clean sheet. And the whole stat about Barca only allowing 1 goal this whole season in La Liga is a little bit, it's just not completely honest, right? This defense is not that good, and Ter Stegen's playing at a really good level, which is helping us. And I feel like we're dominating possession so much in these La Liga games that it's making our team look better than we have been defensively. And I'm just worried because it feels like our entire house of cards is starting to fall apart, right? We're not seeing Lewandowski being an active part of the offense anymore, which is what was made us so happy in the first 2 months of the season, right? You don't see us being able to build up the middle anymore. You don't see, Lewandowski dropping back, playing a 1-2 with Pedri or Xavi, and then going forward to try and finish an offensive scoring situation. And so I'm just getting worried because we have Inter Milan coming up, like you said, in a game that will determine our ability to stay in the Champions League. We have to win that game 100% or we're going to the Europa League. And then we have Real Madrid coming, who are in a pretty good form. And so, let me hear your thoughts about my comments, Yus.
Yeah, so, talking about Xavi's strategy in that first half and how we deployed our players, I think it was a little bit lopsided. I think a lot of our effort was pushed to the left side with Ferran Torres and Jordi Alba, and then some midfielders on the left side, which was Xavi and Busquets, who added to that. But then, on the right side, it becomes very weak. Rafinha's playing over there with not much support. He gets the ball. He kind of got stuck in a situation of not having anybody to interplay with, like Dembele did in our previous game. He has to work to find beat his man, as we saw in that one opportunity inside the box where he should have gotten that penalty and he did not. But, that was one opportunity out of many that he was trying to create by himself. Balde didn't do too much work to help him, and Pedri couldn't do too much either there and, make interplaying runs with Rafinha on the right side. So that's what I'm trying to get at here is it seems like Xavi is putting too many eggs in one basket in the game. So in the first half, we saw a lot of that on the left side, all of our offensive work rate. Once, Celta Vigo figured that out, they can, alter their strategy, and which they did, because after we scored in that second half, then going into the second half, they became one, very much more offensively mindset. And then two, they played a much stronger defense, a much stronger possession, holding the ball and making sure that we couldn't get it, even though Xavi was doing a good job of, getting the ball back. But he did make a lot of fouls. And then to then talk about his Xavi's ability to adapt to the strategy of the game, we come into that second half and we couldn't do anything. We didn't make any offensive changes or defensive changes. So we lost possession of the ball. We couldn't control it. Instead of slowing the game down, working our way up from the back if that's what we needed to do, and then pushing forward, we didn't see that. Or if we were to maintain possession and just play a more strong defensive game, we didn't see that. How many opportunities did Celta Vigo have in that second half to score? Should we have won this game is the question. And then if that is the case, we're just getting lucky now. As you were saying, the output and the lack of goals that teams are scoring against us is not great and representative of the actual gameplay. If everybody is watching every 90 minutes, you can see the holes in our team. And that's not going to be good going against Inter Milan, because we have to score, which means we have to play very offensive. And that's going to leave our defense susceptible to counterattacks. And that most likely will happen at the Camp Nou. Today's game was at the Camp Nou too, and it didn't really seem to benefit us too much. It was just unlucky on Celta Vigo's side, I think, that they didn't score a goal today.
And this is a Celta Vigo team that aren't that great, right? This isn't like in other seasons where maybe they're going to
They've already lost 50% of their games.
Yeah, they're not on the best of form. So it's a little bit different than past seasons when they've, beat us, right? And they've done well against us getting draws and when they've been a better team. I did think PK had a good standout performance, right? If we're thinking about best players in the game, I thought Pedri was, brilliant. He had some amazing dribbles, especially near the end of the first half. Xavi as well played well, and PK and Ter Stegen were also very good. I'm a little bit worried because Lewandowski. It's a little bit of a chicken or an egg thing sometimes with strikers, right? Like if they're not going to get the ball in scoring opportunities, like what more, like how hard can you grade them? But I do think he was just very absent from any of our build-up play. And then Rafinha, there's been this talk over the last few weeks, people getting a little bit upset because Dembele's output in terms of assists and definitely in terms of goals has been down. And so, people have been saying, well, why don't we just start Rafinha on the right? And then you start him today in this game, and I wasn't overly impressed with how Rafinha performed, right? I still think he's, not found his rhythm. I know there are some of our fans who are like huge Rafinha fans and think he's, I don't know, like extremely good, but I'm still not sure if he's figured it out yet. In this game, at least, right? It was not like Dembele against Inter, because Dembele against Inter, he was very isolated. He didn't have Roberto making any runs to overlap or to give him an outlet. He didn't have Gavi at all in that game attacking the half space. So Dembele was alone, and we basically just tried to have a game where Dembele could outplay the Inter defense, and he would outplay one person, but then there was a second and a third, and it didn't work, right? In this game, Rafinha did have Pedri up front trying to attack the half spaces. He did have Balde, who sometimes, especially in the first half, was trying to make runs, and that whole right side was dead, like you're saying. I mean, it feels like we're going like heads, tails, right? Like for the last few games, it's been the left side's completely dead. This game, we get Ferran and Alba starting, and then the left side's active, but now the right side's dead. And so, I mean, Xavi just, we need to figure it out, right? Like, besides the main change of Pedri and Gavi switching sides of the field, it did seem like we're just still playing really stagnant. Right, there's not a lot of people making runs, and whenever someone makes a run, I don't feel like our midfielders or our right or left back are being overly risky in terms of like trying to make that pass. Right, the one time we have Gavi make that run from deep, Jordi Alba finds him, and that leads to the first goal. Right, and unfortunately, we just weren't able to do anything in that second half, right? It felt like at the beginning of the second half, we got punched in the face by Celta Vigo. They came out with a lot of intensity. They started putting it to us, and then it felt like, I don't know, it feels like the whole mental outlook of the team goes from a very good, a good first half where we're putting pressure on to all of a sudden, oh no, this is Celta Vigo putting pressure on us. We just have to withstand it, right? And that's not the mindset we can have for a full 45 plus 6 minutes.
I don't know if it's even an individual player mindset either, though. If you think about it,
I'm
we
talking
subbed
about the
off.
whole team.
Okay, but we subbed off, let's say, 4 players, I think at the 63rd minute. And the performance just kept on, or it was continuously bad, right? So then it goes to say, like, it can't be these individual players that are just completely lackluster. It's got to be our strategy of this game. We had to have the assignments from the coach to do what we did, and it seemed like those assignments weren't very good.
And that's one of the things, right? Is that like part of what had been heralded about Xavi, at least early when he first took over, because if you guys remember last, I think November, we were down in the dumps with Koeman, Messi had left, like everyone was very depressed, nothing was working out, right? And then Xavi came, and we started to play well, and it felt like he had helped change our mindset. But really, for the last 6 years, right, we've had this whole haze over us of just like a really negative mindset of the leaders of this team, right? It shouldn't be shocking that PK, Busquets, Alba were all out on the pitch, and once the other team starts to pour it on us, we just kind of go into a shell. And I feel like, I don't know, we just still aren't able to get out of that phase of our team. And I was really hoping Lewandowski would be the leader to try and push us forward.
Sure.
And we have so many young players that I don't really, as good as Pedri and Gavi are, they're 19 and 17, right? They don't have, I think, the experience and the leadership yet in the locker room, the clubhouse to push us.
Yeah, and there's another thing I've noticed. Last season, since you brought it up, when Xavi came in, it took a little while, but then we had that winter transfer window. We got, Aubameyang, Torres, Traore, and then we started scoring 4 goals almost every game, not allowing maybe 1 or 2 goals every so often, but we beat Real Madrid 4-0. Right? No, what was that game?
Yeah, we beat Madrid 4-0.
Shoot. Okay, 4-0, yeah. And then, it went downhill after that. We struggled. We couldn't score as many goals. We couldn't keep as many clean sheets. And then, this season, something similar has happened. We started out this season with that first game against Rayo. We drew them 1-1 or 0-0. And then the next few games, we just destroyed the teams we were playing against, scoring Lewandowski hat tricks, Dembele, Rafinha, all of them involved, Pedri. But now we're going back into this lull of we're struggling to score goals. We only got 2 goals in the last 2 games, and we probably shouldn't have won either one of those games, or last La Liga games, not counting the game against Inter.
It's funny because you have a good point, right? Which is and it's such a cliche, right? And when it comes to domestic leagues, there's always this attitude of well, you got to win these tough games, these 1-0 games where you win. And you withstand the opponent, that's how you win league titles, right? Is winning the ugly games. But the unfortunate thing here is, ever since the international break, we have 3 ugly games in a row and a bad game with Inter. And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when, right, this isn't like, I don't know, sometime in the spring where we have a few La Liga games and that's it. This is like, okay, we have Inter coming up for our lives in the Champions League on Wednesday, and then we have Clasico on Sunday, which we're tied for number 1 in the league. And I don't know what we need to see exactly from Xavi. I mean, it feels like our team's been found out a bit, right? You don't want to call Xavi a one-trick pony necessarily, but it does feel like teams have learned how to have a low block and then, really work on cutting out our wingers and preventing them from creating offense. And once that happens, there's just no ability for us to make, moves down the middle of the pitch. And it doesn't.
We're not dynamic enough.
Yeah. We're not dynamic enough. We don't have enough interplay between players. We don't have anyone who's going to really take a long dribble through the mid to try and, bypass one or two men to create, imbalances on their defense that we can, take advantage of. And it's a little bit scary, right? I mean, I was so happy before the international break about how this team was going and how the sky was the limit. I was sure we're going to make it into the, knockout stage of the Champions League. I was sure we're going to, fight for number 1 in La Liga, and that's starting to go away a little bit. And it's still a young season. The thing I've been talking about a lot so far this season is that there's really going to be a pre-World Cup season and then a post-World Cup, right? Much more dramatic than ever before because of how long that break will be in the World Cup.
Yeah.
But we need to figure things out fast, and I'm hoping Xavi has the ability to adapt, right? Because I think of Xavi as somewhat stubborn in terms of like he has an idea for how the game should be played and he wants to see it played that way. But clearly his way of playing and these players, it's not gelling entirely, right? And, for the first, it's almost we're almost coming up on a year now of Xavi, maybe 11 months. And like for the first 5 or 6 months, you don't have a preseason. You didn't get the transfer you wanted. We understand that it's a work in progress. And even this season, we understand that we have a lot of youth, but we're starting to get to the point where it's like, we want to see the incremental improvements, right? A lot of the criticism that I just mentioned are things we said about Koeman, right? Which is just that we want to see the coach improve, especially when we had such a big summer. Now, of course, we're missing Koundé, we're missing Araujo, right? We've had some awful injuries that are really putting us back, but the players we have, I think, should be good enough to, not just perform, make a defensive shell for a whole 48 minutes against Celta Vigo.
Yeah, again, that speaks to the strategy that is employed by the coach, right? We had spent so much money activating levers to get these players so that if something like this does happen, we do have players to back up the team. And we now have that situation where the players get injured and we play these other players. And even though we're playing weird center back Alonso, that's not bad enough that we can't beat Celta Vigo, a team who is only scored, I think, 3 goals this season. Lewandowski himself has scored more goals than Celta Vigo. They've only won 50% of their games. They're not doing good overall. And, we should be able to score against this team. We should be able to beat this team without having to look at it and be like, well, is it a Xavi thing? He's not be able to deploy a good strategy and adapt? Or is it a player thing? And it's at this point, I'm getting towards the idea that it's not the individual players. Some of them do have bad games.
The thing is that I would say, too, to bolster your point about it's just we saw beautiful football played, right, at points last season. And we saw it a bit at the beginning of this season, but it just seems like for some, like our players are not able to sustain a certain level for 6 months, 8 months, right? And so we just keep having these flash of pans that for us fans give us heart attacks kind of, right? Because you have your hopes so high because you see a certain period of good football and then you see it kind of fall to the wayside. And like I think all of us were really clenching ourselves during that last 10, 15 minutes of the game because Celta Vigo had, so many good opportunities. But I think, all we have to do is look forward to Inter. Let us know in the comments what you think about this game, how you feel about the team, what you think Xavi got right and didn't get right, because we had a little bit of both in this episode. And then we have a big game coming up against Inter. So everyone, please pray for Barca. Hit that subscribe button. Hit us with a like. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.